My father ignored me for 21 years while worshiping my brother in our family business, but when he found my mother's secret diaries, the DNA test revealed I was the only real son, and he was left broken. I'm 21 years old. I work in my family's HVAC business, and honestly, I need to get this off my chest because what happened in the last few months basically blew my family up into 1,000 pieces, and, truth be told, I don't know if I feel good or bad about my role in all of it. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid and my brother, Nathan, and I were just two kids growing up in a house that, looking back, was never as happy as it seemed from the outside. Nathan is, or was, my older brother by 2 years. I say was because now things are complicated. I'll get to that. We grew up together, shared a room until I was like 12. Did all those things brothers do? You know, fighting over video games and stuff. But always, and when I say always, I mean always, Nathan was the favorite. My dad, Gary, basically lived for that kid. Nathan got good grades. Gary celebrated him like he'd won the Nobel Prize. I got the same grades, and my dad barely looked at me. Nathan played soccer in high school. My dad didn't miss a single game. Screamed his name like crazy from the stands. I also played on the track team, and I think my dad came to watch me like twice in 3 years, and one of those times he left early because Nathan had a game at the same time. My mom, Victoria, was different. I mean, she loved us both, I guess. She was always busy with her things, her friends, her outings, her book clubs, and I don't know what else. Sometimes I wondered why she had kids if she clearly preferred being anywhere else. But well, she was my mom, and you don't choose those things, right? The HVAC business was started by my grandpa like 40 years ago, and my dad basically grew up working there until he inherited it when Grandpa retired. Grandpa died 3 years ago. He was 78, I think, and he was always kind of a tough guy, but fair to me. Fairer than my dad, at least. Nathan was going to inherit the business eventually. That was clear to everyone. I was the one who was going to work there for life as an employee, I guess, doing installations and repairs while Nathan ran everything from the office. That's how things were, and I accepted it because, honestly, what other option did I have? Things started getting weird like 4 months ago. I got home from work on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because we always stop at the same Mexican restaurant on Tuesdays for the taco special, and the house was like charged with a strange energy. My mom was in her room with the door closed, which wasn't that unusual, but my dad was in the living room with an old cardboard box on his lap, reading something that looked like a notebook or diary. He had a face I'd never seen on him, like someone had told him he had a terminal illness or something. Nathan was there too, sitting on the couch with his arms crossed. And when I walked in, they both looked at me in a way that made me feel like I'd just walked into a crime scene. My dad said, "Sit down, Owen. We need to talk about something." And I sat down because, honestly, what else was I going to do? Turns out my dad had been cleaning the attic, something he does like once a decade, and found a box of old stuff belonging to my mom that she probably didn't even remember existed. And in that box were diaries. Diaries from when Nathan was a baby and I wasn't born yet, and diaries from when I was little too. My dad started reading some passages out loud, and basically my mom had been having an affair. A long affair, not a drunken night or a mistake, but a years-long relationship with some guy she met somewhere. The diaries talked about how much she loved this guy, how she wished she could be with him, how sometimes when she was with my dad she thought about the other guy. It was disgusting, honestly. Hearing those things about your own mother. The guy died like 12 years ago in a car accident, and apparently my mom was devastated for months, but obviously couldn't say why. Nathan was white as a sheet. I probably was too. My dad kept reading passages, and what completely screwed me up was when he got to a part where my mom wrote something like, "I don't know if Nathan is Gary's or James's." That was the guy's name, apparently, but at this point, what does it matter? We are where we are. Can you believe it? My mom literally didn't know whose son he was and just decided to go on with her life like nothing happened. But here comes what really changed everything. My dad said that my grandpa, before he died, had confessed something to him. Turns out my grandpa had always suspected my mom was cheating on him, never trusted her from the beginning, and specifically told my dad he believed one of us wasn't his biological grandson. That's why, when he made his will and set up the trust for the business and inheritance, he put in a clause that said only biological grandchildren could inherit. My dad thought the old man was paranoid, that it was just resentment because he never liked my mom, but he kept that information and never mentioned it, until now. My dad looked at Nathan and me and said, "We're going to get DNA tests done. All three of us. I'm going to settle this once and for all." Nathan started arguing, saying it was crazy, that DNA didn't matter because he was his son anyway, but I stayed quiet because a very dark part of me, the part that had grown up being ignored and looked down on while Nathan received all the love and attention, was thinking, what if it turns out I'm the biological one and he's not? What if all these years they treated me like garbage and it turns out I was the only real son? That night my mom finally came downstairs, and there was a monumental fight. My dad was yelling things at her. I never thought I'd hear him yell at anyone. She was crying and saying it was so long ago, that it didn't mean anything now, that James was dead and it was ancient history. But my dad yelled at her that it wasn't ancient history if one of his sons wasn't his son. And that was fair. They ended up sleeping in separate rooms, and the next day the three of us went to a lab to get tested. The 2 weeks it took for the results were the weirdest of my life. Nathan barely spoke to me. My dad was like on autopilot, doing his daily routine, but obviously destroyed inside. And my mom spent all her time locked in her room or going to her sister's house. I kept working at the business, installing air conditioning and heating systems, and the whole time I was thinking about the two possible scenarios. Scenario 1. Nathan is the biological son and I'm not, which meant my dad had been right to treat me differently all these years because somehow his instinct told him I wasn't really his. Scenario 2. I'm the biological son and Nathan isn't, which meant they'd treated me like shit my whole life for nothing, and that guy's son that my mom had the affair with was the one who received all the love. The results came in on a Friday. My dad gathered us in the living room again. He had the envelope in his hand and opened it with hands that were shaking a little. He read it silently first, and I saw his face go through like 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. Then he looked at us and said, "Owen is my biological son. Nathan is not." The silence that followed was probably the most awkward moment of my life. Nathan just sat there processing. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or guilty or what, and my dad just stared at the paper like he couldn't believe what it said, even though he'd read it 3 times already. Nathan eventually got up and went to his room, and I heard him slam the door. My dad looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that could have been respect, or maybe just shock. I don't know. Like 2 days passed where we all avoided talking about it directly, but it was obviously the only thing everyone was thinking about. My dad tried to act normal with me, but it was weird, like he didn't know how to treat me now. Nathan avoided me completely, stayed in his room or went out with friends. My mom tried to talk to me once, saying something about how we were both her sons no matter what, but I told her I didn't want to talk to her, and she left crying. Which made me feel bad, but also not really because, she had caused this whole mess. Then came the moment that, I'm not going to lie, I'd been waiting for in the back of my mind. It was Sunday morning. My dad and Nathan were in the kitchen talking in low voices, and I decided to go down and confront the situation. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table with them, and I said directly to my dad, "So what's going to happen with Nathan?" My dad looked at me confused, and I continued, If I had been the one who wasn't your biological son, you would have kicked me out of the house, right? I wouldn't be part of the family anymore. I wouldn't inherit anything. You'd basically stop, considering me your son. So why is Nathan still here?" Nathan exploded, started yelling at me about how could I be such a son of a bitch, that he grew up being my brother and that didn't change just because some stupid paper said something. But I stood firm, looking at my dad, and I said, "Answer the question. If I were Nathan right now, you would have already kicked me out. You said it yourself years ago when you kicked me out of the house for 3 days when I failed a test. You said you didn't tolerate losers in your family. Well, turns out Nathan isn't even from your family, so apply the same rules." My dad looked destroyed, but I could see in his face that he knew I was right. If the positions were reversed, I'd be on the street without a second thought. I'd spent basically my whole life watching him treat Nathan like gold and me like garbage, and now that the truth had come out, I wasn't going to let him continue with the double standard. I told my dad, either you kick him out of the house or I leave, and this time forever. Choose. Nathan kept yelling, calling me a monster and vindictive, and I don't know how many other things, but my dad eventually raised his hand to silence him and said, Nathan, I need you to pack your things. He said it quietly, almost like it physically hurt him to say the words, but he said them. Nathan couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he'd actually done it either. But there it was. Nathan looked at my dad as if expecting him to take it back, then looked at me with a hatred that honestly scared me a little and went to his room to pack. He left that same afternoon. My dad helped him put his stuff in his car, a 2019 Honda Accord that of course my dad had bought Nathan when he turned 18, while I had to buy my own used truck when I turned the same age. There was an awkward moment in the driveway, where my dad and Nathan just stared at each other, and I think my dad wanted to hug him but didn't. Nathan shot me one last look of pure hatred, and left. He went to live with a friend from college. I found out later. I thought that would be the end of the drama. But oh no, it was just getting started. Like a week later, Nathan called me. I almost didn't answer because honestly I didn't want to talk to him, but something made me answer. His voice sounded weird, like forcedly calm, and he told me we needed to talk. I told him we had nothing to talk about, and he said, "Oh no, not even about Mom's other affairs?" My blood ran cold. I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me he'd gone back to the house when we all went out, broke into the attic, and found more diaries my dad hadn't reviewed yet. Turns out Guy James wasn't my mom's only affair. There were others, several others over the years. Nathan told me that if I didn't convince my dad to let him come back to the house, he was going to tell my dad everything and completely destroy the marriage. It was basically an attempted blackmail, and I told him to do whatever he wanted, that the marriage was already destroyed anyway, but there was no way he was coming back. Nathan must have thought I was bluffing because 2 days later, my dad came home from work in a rage. Nathan had gone to the business office and told him everything about the other men, names, dates, places. My dad confronted my mom that same night, and it was horrible. I was in my room but could hear the screaming. My mom couldn't deny it because Nathan had apparently given my dad copies of pages from the diaries, so there was no way to lie. I heard my mom begging, saying they were mistakes, that she had problems, that she needed help at that time in her life, all kinds of excuses. My dad yelled at her that they'd been married 25 years, and he'd basically lived a lie all that time. He asked her if she'd ever really loved him, or if she'd just stayed with him for financial security, and my mom didn't answer, which I think was answer enough. The next day, my dad went to a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. My mom packed her things during that week, crying the whole time, trying to talk to me, but I really didn't want to hear it. I didn't feel sorry for her. Honestly, she had destroyed our family with her lies and affairs. She'd made my dad favor the son, who wasn't even his while treating me, his real son, like second choice. I couldn't forgive that. My mom went to live with her sister, my Aunt Rachel, who lives like 45 minutes from here. The house was left with just my dad and me, and it was weird at first. My dad was obviously devastated. Lost like 15 pounds in a month. Slept little. Sometimes I'd hear him awake at 3 inches the morning watching TV. The business kept running, but he was like on autopilot, doing the bare minimum. I thought things would finally calm down, but like 3 weeks ago Nathan called me again. This time he sounded different, like desperate or something. He told me he'd been thinking a lot about everything, that he realized Mom and Dad really loved each other underneath all this mess, and that if we worked together we could get them to reconcile. I honestly thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. He explained this delusional plan where I would convince Dad to give Mom another chance, and he would convince Mom to genuinely apologize, and we could all be a family again. I told him he was completely crazy, that Dad was literally in the process of divorce, that there was no way that was going to happen. Nathan got defensive and said, I just wanted the family to be destroyed because I'd always been bitter, that this was my revenge for years of feeling inferior. And maybe he was a little bit right. I don't know. But I still told him no, that I wasn't going to help him with his fantasy of reuniting our parents. He hung up angry, and I haven't heard from him since. What happened next was maybe the weirdest thing of all. Like 2 weeks ago, my dad came home early from work, found me in the living room watching TV, and sat down next to me. He was quiet for a while, which wasn't that unusual anymore because lately we didn't talk much. But then he said, "Owen, I need to tell you something." I turned off the TV and looked at him, and he started talking about how he'd been a bad father to me. He didn't just say I wasn't perfect or something generic. He specifically said he'd unfairly favored Nathan, that he'd treated me like I was less, that he'd failed me for 21 years. He apologized to me, and not in a casual way, but really, with tears in his eyes and everything. He said he had no excuse, that he'd projected something onto Nathan that I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe because he was the firstborn or because he reminded him of himself when he was young. I don't know. But that I had been his biological son the whole time, and he'd treated me like a stranger in my own house. He told me he'd understand if I couldn't forgive him, but that he wanted to try to start over, really get to know me as his son. I'm not going to lie, it was intense. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, that he couldn't just apologize and expect 21 years of feeling like garbage to disappear. But another part of me, the part that always wanted my dad's approval even though I never admitted it, softened a little. I didn't tell him. I forgave him because, honestly, I don't know if I do yet. But I told him we could try to work things out, take things day by day. Since then, things have been different between us. My dad asks me how my day was. Really listens when I tell him about work. He invited me to a baseball game last week that was kind of awkward but also kind of nice. It's weird having his attention after so many years of not having it. Sometimes I feel guilty, like I destroyed Nathan to take his place. But then I remember I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask for my mom to have affairs. I didn't ask for my dad to treat me differently my whole life. I just asked for the same rules to apply to everyone. The divorce was finalized like a week ago. My dad is now officially single after 25 years of marriage. My mom is still living with my aunt. Nathan is still with his friend, and lately has been posting weird stuff on social media about family and forgiveness that are clearly indirect messages. The business is now officially mine to eventually inherit, according to Grandpa's trust, since I'm the only biological grandson. It's ironic, isn't it? My whole life being the forgotten one. And, it turns out, I was always the legitimate heir. I don't know if I did the right thing demanding they kick Nathan out. Sometimes I think I was too harsh, that I should have been the bigger person and let him stay despite everything. But then I remember all the times my dad made me feel invisible. All the times Nathan got things that were denied to me. All the Christmases where his gifts were better. All the times my dad went to his sporting events but not mine. All the times I was told I needed to be more like Nathan, and then I don't feel so bad. My mom has tried to contact me a couple times. She sends me text messages saying she wants to explain herself, that things aren't black and white, that she was also unhappy in her marriage. But honestly, I'm not interested in hearing it. Maybe someday, I don't know. But right now, I can't see her without thinking about all the damage she caused, not just to me, but to everyone. The craziest thing is that sometimes I miss how it was before, when we were a dysfunctional family, but at least we were a family, you know? Nathan and I played video games together even though he always won. My mom cooked Sunday dinners even though she was mentally somewhere else. My dad worked all day, but at least he came home. Now the house is half empty. It's just my dad and me. And there's all this weird tension, where we're both trying to figure out how to really be father and son after all these years. The other day I found an old photo of when Nathan and I were kids. We must have been like 8 and 10 years old. We were at Disneyland, I think. Both of us with Mickey ears, smiling like we were best friends in the world. I stared at that photo for a good while and wondered at what exact moment everything got screwed up. Was it when my mom started her first affair? Was it when my dad decided Nathan was better than me? Was it when my grandpa suspected the truth but never said anything directly? I don't know. What I do know is that now my family is destroyed. My brother, or ex-brother, or whatever Nathan is now, hates me. My mom is living with my aunt in basically family exile. My dad is trying to rebuild a relationship with me that never really existed. And I'm here at 21 trying to process all of this while working, installing air conditioners like nothing happened. People at work know something happened because my dad and I were known for not getting along, and now suddenly we're working together more amicably. And Nathan, who used to come to the office often, doesn't show up there anymore. But nobody asks directly because, it's not really their problem either. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my dad had never found those diaries. We'd still be a fake family, but at least we'd still be a family. Nathan would still be the favorite. I'd still be the forgotten one. My mom would still be keeping her secrets. My dad would still not know he'd raised another man's son as if he were his own. Would that have been better? Honestly, I don't know. Ignorance is bliss, they say. But it's also a lie, and I've had enough lies for a lifetime. The only thing keeping me somewhat sane is knowing that at least now everything is on the table. There are no more secrets, no more favoritism based on lies, no more pretending we're a happy family when we clearly never were. It's painful and complicated, and I'll probably need therapy at some point to process all of this, but at least it's real. Yesterday, my dad asked me if I could ever forgive my mom, and I told him, honestly, I didn't know. He asked me if I could ever forgive Nathan for trying to blackmail me, and I also told him I didn't know. Then he asked me if I could forgive him, and I said the same thing. Maybe someday, but right now everything is too recent, too raw, too complicated. For now, I'm just taking things day by day, learning to have a relationship with my dad, working at the business that apparently will someday be mine, and trying not to think too much about how an old box of diaries in the attic completely destroyed everything I knew. It's weird how your entire life can change because of something as simple as words written decades ago by someone who never thought anyone would read them. Sometimes the truth sets you free, and sometimes it just shows you how long you've been living a lie.